Hi again, more on graphs and data sets. One of the things that can be especially useful is to show events in graphs. So for example, if I create a graph which is going to be our average and our range, let's create that graph quickly. So we'll go insert, jump in, we'll pick a line graph, like that, perfect. Don't forget we always want to, when we've selected our graph, go in and select our data up. I'm going to change this data set over to be our number of days, so that axis is correct. Then I am going to label our series up correctly by picking average as that name, and then this series we will edit it and call that the range. Now we've got that, excluding titles for the moment. What I might like to do is do something like actually highlight where this transport period over here is happening, and these are rival points. So let's look at highlighting the transport point. What I can do with that is either manually go through and illustrate it by selecting a new column. Let's just do a quick insert here. Now I'm going to call this column traveling. And what I can do is just go down here and go, we'll throw in a 1. And logically, a 1 is equivalent to true, and empty or 0 is equivalent to false. Because we've got this, what we can now do is add a whole new data set to our chart. So we go select data, we'll add in a new entry, and we're going to call this one traveling. So we'll grab that. And the series values, well, let's delete out this brackets 1, and we're going to throw in this whole column. Now what that's done, you see, is thrown in this little line down the bottom, so we can see when we were actually traveling. What if we wanted to make that bigger? Well, what we can do is we can actually select the line, go into change chart type, let's plot it on a secondary axis so it becomes higher, and let's change its type over to something like a bar graph. So now we've got a fairly ugly way to demonstrate that. So we've got that. You'll see that it's not jumping between 0 and 1 because we've got no zeros in here. So let's just throw some zeros in for our data set. Now all of a sudden we've got this little bump. We can go back into that chart design and change the chart type. Throw it on a secondary axis, and of course what we have is, because we're going between 0 and 1, we now have a lovely bump showing us there. Now if we wanted to actually fill that in, we could select it again, go back to change chart type, and we could do something like an area underneath, oops, like an area, and that shows us the travel period. That quite nicely illustrates that bit. Now, say for example, we wanted to actually make it so it went all the way up to the top. So what I can do to update this axis is if I left click on it, and then you go right click, format axis, and it shows you over here in the side panel, and we can change this between 0 and 1. And then all of a sudden our graph goes up to the top. There's no need to do these minor units. You can see it's going up by 0.1, and we can change that by updating these. So if I went to, let's just do an axis of 1, tab away from it, you can see there we've got a 0 and a 1.